What happens when a beloved talk show host finally snaps? In just 39 seconds, Prince Harry went from royal guest to ejected troublemaker as Graham Norton publicly dismantled his credibility in front of millions of viewers. The friendly chat show everyone expected turned into a brutal verbal war that ended with security being called and cameras still rolling. Before we get into this explosive story, make sure you subscribe to this channel. We post daily videos exposing the royal family's darkest scandals. Hit that subscribe button now so you never miss the drama. Last night's episode of The Graham Norton Show was supposed to be another star-studded evening of light-hearted banter and promotion. Prince Harry had been booked to discuss his latest charitable project and perhaps share a few amusing anecdotes about life in California. The studio audience settled into their seats, expecting laughs and maybe some gentle teasing. What they got instead was a masterclass in how quickly things can go wrong when egos clash and patience runs out. The show opened normally enough. Graham Norton, in his signature red chair, welcomed the audience with his usual charm and wit. The camera panned across the other guests on the sofa. A popular British actress and a chart-topping musician, both looking excited for the evening ahead. Then Graham announced Prince Harry's arrival, and the Duke of Sussex walked out to polite applause, waving at the crowd with that familiar smile plastered across his face. The first few minutes passed without incident. Graham asked Harry about his recent trip back to the UK and whether he missed British weather. Harry laughed and made a joke about California sunshine being overrated. The audience chuckled. The actress next to him nodded politely. Everything seemed fine on the surface, but those watching closely could sense something different in Graham's tone. There was an edge there, a sharpness that hadn't been present in previous interviews with the prince. Then Graham shifted gears. He brought up Harry's upcoming memoir follow-up, a book that had been generating controversy before a single word had been published. The promotional material suggested even more family revelations, more private conversations exposed, more grievances aired in public. Graham leaned forward slightly, his expression changing from playful to serious. "So Harry, another book," Graham said, his voice measured. "More stories about your family. More private moments shared with the world. When does it end exactly?" The studio went quiet. This wasn't the gentle questioning anyone expected. Harry's smile faltered for just a moment before he recovered, shifting in his seat. "Well, Graham, I think it's important to tell my truth," Harry replied, using the phrase that had become his motto. "People deserve to know what really happened behind closed doors." "Your truth," Graham repeated, and there was something in the way he said it that made several audience members exchange glances. "That's an interesting phrase. As opposed to the actual truth? Or just the truth? Why does it need to belong to you, specifically?" Harry's jaw tightened. "I'm sharing my experiences, my perspective on events that affected my life. That's what truth is, isn't it? My lived experience." Graham sat back in his chair, studying his guest with an expression that was becoming less friendly by the second. The actress and musician on the sofa had gone very still, clearly sensing the tension building between host and guest. "Here's what I find fascinating," Graham continued, his Irish accent becoming more pronounced as it always did when he was getting worked up. "You've made a career now out of demanding privacy while simultaneously selling every private detail of your life. You complain about media intrusion while calling photographers to document your every move. You talk about protecting your family while throwing your own family under the bus at every opportunity. How do you square that circle?" The audience was dead silent now. This was unprecedented. Graham Norton was known for being cheeky, sometimes a bit naughty, but never outright confrontational with his guests. Harry's face had gone red, his hands gripping the armrests of the sofa. "That's not fair," Harry shot back, his voice rising slightly. "You don't know what it's like to grow up in that institution, to have your life controlled, to have no freedom. I'm finally free to speak my mind and people like you want to silence me." "Nobody's silencing you, Harry," Graham replied, his tone sharp as a knife. "You've got Netflix deals, book deals, podcast deals, interviews lined up around the block. You're one of the least silenced people on the planet. What you mean is that you want to speak your mind without anyone questioning what you're saying or pointing out the contradictions." Harry stood up slightly before sitting back down, clearly agitated. The musician next to him had started looking at the floor, desperately wishing to be anywhere else. The actress was frozen, with a polite smile fixed on her face. The kind of expression people wear when they're witnessing something deeply uncomfortable but don't know how to react. "I came on this show to talk about my charity work," Harry said, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "To talk about helping people, making a difference, and instead you're attacking me." Graham laughed. But it wasn't a warm laugh. It was the kind of laugh that cuts right through pretense and performance. "Attacking you? I'm asking you questions, Harry. Basic questions that any journalist should be asking, but apparently nobody does, because you've surrounded yourself with yes men and people on your payroll. You want to be treated like a serious person doing serious work, then answer serious questions." The studio lights seemed brighter somehow, harsher. Every camera was focused on the sofa where this car crash was unfolding in real time. The producers in the control room were frantically trying to decide whether to cut to commercial or let it play out. They chose the latter. This was television gold, after all, even if it was getting ugly. Harry's voice dropped to a dangerous quiet. "You don't get to sit there in your comfortable chair, making millions from your show, and judge my life choices. You have no idea what I've been through." "Here we go," Graham said, throwing his hands up. "The 'you don't understand my struggle' defense. Harry, you're a millionaire prince who grew up in palaces. Yes, terrible things happened to you. Your mother died tragically, and that's genuinely awful. But you've turned that trauma into a business model. You've monetized your misery and weaponized your victimhood. And when anyone points that out, you hide behind your grief like it's a shield against all criticism." The audience gasped. Several people put their hands over their mouths. This had crossed from uncomfortable into absolutely brutal. Harry was on his feet now, his face a deep shade of red that clashed with his ginger hair. "How dare you?" Harry hissed, pointing his finger at Graham. "How bloody dare you? You sit there making jokes and gossiping about celebrities, and you think that gives you the right to psychoanalyze me? To dismiss everything I've been through?" Graham stood up too, and for a moment they faced each other across the coffee table. Two men who had clearly hit a point of no return. "I'm not dismissing what you've been through," Graham said, his voice steady but hard. "I'm pointing out that you've chosen to deal with it by hurting other people. Your father, your brother, your family, they're all fair game apparently. Every private conversation, every family argument, every unflattering detail, you sell it all to the highest bidder, and then act surprised when people call you out for it." Harry's hands were shaking now, whether from anger or something else, it was hard to tell. The actress had actually shifted away from him on the sofa, creating more distance. The musician was staring straight ahead like he was trying to teleport out of the studio. "My father and brother know what they did," Harry spat out. "They know how they treated me, how they treated my wife. They're protected by the institution, by the media, by people like you, who refuse to hold them accountable." "Hold them accountable?" Graham's voice went up a notch. "Harry, you're not some investigative journalist exposing corruption. You're a bitter ex-royal airing family drama for profit. There's a difference. Your grandmother spent 70 years serving her country with dignity, never complaining, never explaining. And you can't go 70 minutes without whinging about how hard your life is. That did it. That was the line that couldn't be uncrossed." Harry's face went from red to almost purple. He took a step toward Graham, and for a brief second, it looked like things might get physical. Security guards near the edge of the studio tensed up, ready to move. "Don't you dare bring my grandmother into this," Harry said, his voice shaking with rage. "Don't you dare use her to make your point. You didn't know her. You don't know anything about our family." Graham didn't back down. If anything, he stepped closer too, meeting Harry's energy with his own steel. "I know that she dedicated her entire life to duty and service. I know that she understood what it meant to be royal, to sacrifice personal happiness for the greater good. And I know that she'd be absolutely horrified at what you've become, what you're doing to the family name, selling out your relatives for Netflix money. That's your legacy now, Harry. Not your charity work, not your military service. Just this endless, tedious victim narrative that you can't seem to let go of." The words hung in the air like poison gas. The audience was so quiet you could hear the cameras whirring, capturing every second of this disaster. Harry's chest was heaving, his breath coming in short, angry bursts. "Screw you," Harry said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Screw you and your sanctimonious bullshit. You make your living off gossip and celebrity drama, and you have the nerve to lecture me about dignity? You're a bloody hypocrite." Graham's expression hardened even more, something nobody would have thought possible a moment before. "The difference between us, Harry, is that I'm honest about what I do. I host a chat show. I talk to celebrities. I make people laugh. I don't pretend to be some great humanitarian while stabbing my family in the back. I don't preach about mental health while causing my father and brother untold mental anguish. I don't talk about privacy while putting my entire life on display. At least I'm consistent." Harry pointed at Graham again, his finger trembling. "You know what? I'm done. I'm done with this interview. I'm done with your show. And I'm done with people like you who think you can tear me down." "Then leave," Graham said coldly. "Nobody's keeping you here. If you can't handle basic questions without throwing a tantrum, then off you go. The door's right there." For a long moment, Harry just stood there, breathing hard, clearly trying to decide what to do. The cameras captured every second of his internal struggle, the anger and humiliation playing across his face in real time. The audience sat frozen, afraid to move, afraid to make a sound that might set him off again. Then Harry made his decision. He turned to the actress and musician on the sofa. "Sorry you had to witness this," he said, his voice dripping with false sincerity. "Some people just can't handle the truth." Graham barked out a laugh that was pure contempt. "Oh, that's rich. Yes, Harry, I'm the one who can't handle the truth. Not you, the man who rewrites history to suit his narrative. Off you go then. I'm sure there's a podcast somewhere that needs you to complain about this interview." Harry's hands clenched into fists at his sides. For a second, it really did look like he might take a swing at Graham. The security guards moved closer, ready to intervene. But Harry, to his credit, or perhaps his relief, kept his hands to himself. "You'll regret this," Harry said, and it sounded like a threat. Graham smiled, but it was the coldest smile anyone in that studio had ever seen. "The only thing I regret is wasting airtime on someone who has nothing interesting to say anymore. You used to be a prince with potential, Harry. Now you're just a professional complainer with a persecution complex. Congratulations on the downgrade." That was it. That was the final straw. Harry ripped off his microphone, the battery pack clattering onto the coffee table. He didn't say another word to Graham, didn't acknowledge the audience, didn't even look at the other guests. He just turned on his heel and stormed toward the exit, his footsteps echoing in the silent studio. But Graham wasn't finished. As Harry reached the edge of the stage area, Graham called out to him, his voice carrying across the entire space. "Harry, one more thing." Harry stopped, but didn't turn around. His back was rigid, his shoulders up around his ears. "When you write about this in your next book," Graham said, his voice thick with sarcasm, "try to get the quotes right this time. I know accuracy isn't your strong suit, but do try." Harry's shoulders tensed even more, and for a heartbeat it seemed like he might come back, might continue the fight. But instead, he kept walking, disappearing through the studio doors without looking back. The heavy door slammed behind him with a bang that made several audience members jump. The studio remained silent for what felt like forever, but was probably only a few seconds. Graham stood there, still holding his microphone, looking at the door Harry had exited through. Then he turned back to his remaining guests and the audience, and slowly, that famous Graham Norton smile returned to his face, though it looked a bit more tired than usual. "Well," he said, his voice light again, as if nothing had happened. "That was unexpected." The audience erupted. Some were applauding. Some were laughing. Some were just making noise because they didn't know how else to react to what they'd just witnessed. The actress on the sofa let out a breath she'd apparently been holding for minutes. The musician started laughing. The kind of nervous laughter that comes from surviving something intense. Graham sat back down in his red chair, smoothing out his suit jacket. He looked at the camera, and there was something in his eyes, a mixture of satisfaction and perhaps a tiny bit of regret, though the regret might have been imagined. "Right then," he said to his remaining guests, "shall we talk about literally anything else?" The show continued, but everyone knew that nothing else that night would come close to matching those 15 minutes of pure, unscripted television warfare. Graham Norton had done what countless journalists had been too polite or too scared to do. He'd challenged Prince Harry directly, refused to accept the carefully crafted narrative, and called out the contradictions that had been obvious to many but rarely voiced so bluntly. And Harry? Harry had walked out, unable to defend himself, unable to answer the questions, unable to do anything but retreat when confronted with someone who wouldn't play along with his version of events. The cameras had caught it all. Every word, every expression, every moment of the complete breakdown of what should have been a simple celebrity interview. The doors remained closed. Harry didn't come back. Security confirmed he'd left the building entirely, climbing into a waiting car without speaking to anyone. Inside the studio, Graham Norton finished his show like the professional he was. But everyone knew what the headlines would be about tomorrow. This wasn't just a tense interview. This was the night a beloved talk show host took down a prince. And the prince had no choice but to walk away.